Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here today. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize at the outset. I'm sure you're all sort of hearing this or seeing it on your Twitter feed. There was a shooting this morning at the congressional baseball game, and it appears as though the whip, Steve Scalise, was hit as well as a few others. So if you wouldn't mind, please join me in just a quick moment of silence as our thoughts and our prayers go out to those that were affected. Thank you. I think in light of something like that, it really throws into sharp relief how important it is to have groups like this that are committed to coming together, to transcending party lines and all the forces that would seek to divide us in this country, and just coming together as Americans to do the right thing and find areas of common ground. And I want to thank you for that. And it's an honor to be with you this morning. I've long been involved and a fan of the work of USGLC on the other side of the aisle or on the other side of the equation as a staffer. And I could not have done my job on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee were not for the help and the support I received from USGLC. And to be here as a member of Congress, to have be a small part of an effort to restore American leadership is truly an honor. And I'm reminded of actually when Representative Scalise came to Green Bay, Wisconsin, towards the end of my campaign, and we had a roundtable discussion about a lot of the challenges we were facing, many of them foreign policy challenges. And I remember throughout the campaign, I know we have a Wisconsin delegation somewhere in the back there. There we go. Why do you stick the Wisconsinites in the back? But you put them with Les Munson. That's a great honor, so good. And I would say, what people were asking at this roundtable, I can't tell you how many times throughout the course of the campaign someone came up to me from Green Bay, Wisconsin, where we can often seem disconnected or isolated from the great challenges of geopolitics or problems that we face in Afghanistan or Syria or the South and East China Sea, and would ask me about foreign policy, would ask me, quite frankly, is it safe to go to a Packer game? Such were the challenges we were facing abroad. And I would submit to you that when the state of American leadership has languished to the point that it reaches Lambeau Field, then indeed we have very serious challenges that we need to come together to confront, not as Republicans, not as Democrats, but as Americans. And when it comes to the issues that all of you are dedicating yourself to, I think you will find people in office that are hungry to do just that are eager to break out of the traditional model of hyper-partisanship that simply divides us and makes these challenges even more difficult to fix. And I just would submit that the challenges are obvious. For almost 6 years now, the Budget Control Act in particular has set arbitrary and dangerous limits on both defense and non-defense spending. Not only were the BCA spending limits entirely unconnected from any sort of national strategy to advance our interest abroad, but they focused almost entirely on discretionary spending, leaving mandatory spending entitlements, the true driver of our national debt, virtually untouched. And in recent years, Congress has passed stopgap spending deals that have brought modest relief, but our spending on national security is still driven by arbitrary numbers and not our national interest. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the administration's FY 2018 budget requests, which underfunds both defense and international affairs budgets. 6 years apart, Secretary of Defense Robert Gates and my colleagues, Chairman Thornberry and Chairman McCain, have independently found that we must spend at least $100 billion more per year on defense than budget caps currently allow. That's at a bare minimum in order to satisfy our ongoing requirements. For FY 18, this means a base defense budget of about $640 billion, up from the administration's request of $603 billion. At the same time, the administration has also paid for this inadequate defense top line through even deeper cuts to non-defense spending, including the international affairs budget. Under the President's plan, the international affairs budget would see a 32% reduction, which would bring it to 0.2% of GDP, the lowest level since World War II. While I appreciate the desire to find efficiencies, and I recognize that we all have a duty to make tough choices, the scale of these cuts, the focus of these cuts, just simply not make any sense to me. Well, I served in the Marine Corps, and I know we have a lot of Marines here today. Hoorah. I saw firsthand the importance of humanitarian and foreign assistance to help us win allies and develop new partnerships. I know there's a tendency among a certain group to see soft power as squishy. But I would submit that the only people that hold that view are those who have never wielded or had to wield hard power, and seeing how important the non-military instruments of national security are to our national security, and how when they work together, that's how we can truly advance American interests abroad. And no one understood this more than Ronald Reagan, whose Peace Through Strength agenda led him to invest 0.6% of America's GDP on international affairs, its highest level in over 40 years. President Reagan understood that investing in soft power was a natural complement to a military buildup. At the same time that he built a military that could defeat the Soviets in battle, he invested in promoting American values in order to defeat the Soviets in the war of ideas. While the threats today are different from those that confronted President Reagan, and Les has told me tales of what the 80s were like and what he used to wear back then, our wars of ideas are no less urgent, and there are many lessons we can derive from that period of time and transport to the present day. And every day we see the fruits, the bitter fruits of radical ideologies that continue to threaten our way of life. And I would submit that we cannot defeat extremism without defeating the ideology that underpins it. And to do this, we must give all of those at the tip of the spear, not just the Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, but also the intelligence operatives, the diplomats, the USAID officers, our Peace Corps workers, the tools that they need to be successful. And this is why I'm so committed to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to find a long-term solution to our fiscal issues and ensuring that we appropriately defend defense and the international affairs budget. Now, at the beginning of my remarks, I alluded not only to current challenges, but current opportunities as well. Notwithstanding everything you read on the headlines, and particularly on days like this that can be very divisive, I remain optimistic. I believe that Congress still has a unique window of time here where men and women of good faith, patriotic men and women that are serving, can come together and arrive at a long-term fiscal solution, a long-term budget deal, as well as embark on regulatory reform and smart tax reform that will unleash economic growth and in turn produce more revenues. And I think that that is precisely what the moment calls for. I would urge you, in your dealing with the Hills today, to put pressure on the elected representatives that serve here to do the right thing, to put aside their talking points and have an honest conversation with you about what we need to do to fix these problems, how we can come together to do the right thing, how we can address things like the BCA and sequester, which, as Secretary Mattis confirmed before the Armed Services Committee on Monday night, has done more damage to our military than any enemy in the field could have hoped to do. That is the task you have, and your work could not be more urgent right now. But beyond that, beyond the optimism that I derive from looking at a group of people like this, I am also optimistic for two more reasons. The first is the new members of Congress that I've been fortunate enough to get to know in the last 7 months. I'll admit I was quite skeptical coming into this job. Maybe having worked on the staff side of things, having seen how the sausage was made, it produced a certain amount of skepticism, but I have been nothing short of blown away by the quality of men and women that have chosen to step up and serve on both sides of the aisle in this incredibly, incredibly difficult time. And most of the time, I think the American people would be shocked to find that when we're on the House floor, when people are out of the earshot of cameras or reporters, they're having perfectly civil, productive conversations about the very difficult problems we face. And I think if both parties were being honest about these challenges, they would say neither party has a silver bullet solution, and that we need to have the humility to recognize that we can learn from each other, and we can learn from the states and all the leaders that are in the room here today. But the final reason that makes me optimistic is something that I get to do in this job that is truly a perk and a privilege, and it's one that I exploit ruthlessly, and I'm not ashamed to say that I do. I get about a 2-week notification when a member or a kid from my district gets accepted to the Naval Academy or to West Point or to the Air Force Academy. And what I do is I will call the principal of the high school that this kid goes to, and I say, hey, can you pull this kid out of class? And you should see the resumes of these kids that are that are getting accepted today, they're incredible. They're overachievers. And so they've literally never been in trouble in their whole life. And so when the principal's pulling them out of class, they think they're getting suspended for the first time in their life. So by the time they reach the principal's office, they're usually in a mild state of panic, sweating, and I'm on the loudspeaker, and I get to say to this young man or this young woman, I say, hi, my name's Michael Gallagher. You don't know who I am, but I represent you in Congress, and I just want to be the first to tell you that you got accepted to West Point, to the Naval Academy, to the Air Force Academy, and I wanted to tell you how proud you've made the country, your family, how proud you've made the state of Wisconsin, and I look forward to watching you continue to make the country proud in the years to come. And so when things get really difficult in Washington, D.C., as today will demonstrate how difficult they can get, I think about those kids from Northeast Wisconsin who in just 5 years will be deployed fighting the same war that I was fighting 8 years ago. And I think we should all think long and hard about what type of military, what type of State Department, what type of economy, what type of country, what state of civic discourse do we want to leave to those kids when we pass the torch to them, when we send them into harm's way and we ask them to risk their lives on our behalf. And so from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of those kids and their families who I have the honor of representing, I want to thank you for the work that all of you do. It is absolutely essential, and I wish you luck today on the Hill, and I'm honored to be a partner and an ally in this cause. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.